Hi Fisher Unitech SolidWorks community, this is Heather from Tech Support. Thanks for checking out our video on using Instant 2D and Instant 3D in SolidWorks. This video is a segment from our monthly webinar straight from support. If you'd like to check out this or other videos from this week's episode, be sure to check out the links in the video description and join us this third Wednesday of every month for straight from support. On that note, let's jump into our topic.
So our third topic today are what are Instant 2D and what is Instant 3D. And we're going to be going over these. We're going to be looking at a few ways that these two things affect your SolidWorks. And I have two very blurry icons of it. I couldn't get it to resolve any better, so sorry about that, especially if you guys are watching this on a very big screen. So I'm sure those icons are pretty blurry. We're going to be talking about Instant 2D and Instant 3D. So Instant 2D came out in 2016, and we're going to be looking at that first. And also Instant 3D came out in 2009. And I really like to think about these as modes that we work in rather than just tools like we normally see with all the options in SolidWorks, because they really switch a lot of things around and switch a lot of settings. And we're going to take a look at how flipping on these modes can actually affect how we're modeling in SolidWorks. So I have a part open, and I'm going to go ahead and open up. You guys have seen this assembly before, especially if you watched last week's episode. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a part from this assembly. So I have this small base right here. So first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that my Instant 2D and Instant 3D features are on. So to turn on Instant 3D, I go to my Features tab, and I make sure that this Instant 3D button is embossed. To turn on Instant 2D, I do the same to my Sketch tab, and I make sure that Instant 2D is embossed. So let's look at some things we can do now that we have Instant 2D on. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to go into this sketch. The biggest thing I see happen, whoa, that's fun. Sorry about that. The biggest thing I see people kind of notice about Instant 2D is that when they click on a part or click on a dimension, it automatically brings up this box and you don't have all your options. Just to show you what it looks like without it, when I click on it, it does nothing, and when I double click, it brings up all of my options for my sketch. But with Instant 2D on, a single click just brings up this box. So the reason for this is it wants it to make it a little bit easier for you if you're just changing a lot of dimensions on the fly. It wants to be there so you can change the dimensions. It does make it a little bit harder to do that double click. You have to hold the cadence and be pretty quick to do it. I do see a misconception saying, oh, we can't get to our sketch options now or our dimension options because of Instant 2D. That's not accurate. You just have to make sure you double click on that specific dimension and you'll get it there. So you want to do the double click pretty quickly, because if it interprets it as a single click, it is going to just pull up that box. So if you double click a little bit too slow, or if you double click and then try and click on the leader. Something else we see in Instant 2D, so we can click on this leader and notice that I get this blue dot that pops up on my dimension. So I'm going to click on this leader and I get these blue dots on either side of my dimensions here. So what these blue dots are doing is they're indicating to me that this is something about my 2D sketch that can actually be changed. So what I can do is just by clicking on the blue dot and dragging, I can change the dimension of this sketch. And this is a good thing or a bad thing. Normally when I'm teaching Essentials, I have people turn Instant 2D off because it's pretty easy to accidentally bump it and then turn on and then get a sketch dimension that you don't want. This is pretty handy if you've kind of guesstimated your dimensions, you're not sure, maybe you're designing something new or they're designing something in context, and you want to make sure it's kind of this dimension, but it could be something else. Now you have the ability to drag and drop that dimension. All right. Another thing we see with Instant 2D, so let's get out of the sketch. Oh, actually, before I do that, when I get out of the sketch, normally what I do when I get out of the sketch is I hit this exit sketch button. And with Instant 2D off, that's really the only way, this button or this button. With Instant 2D on, in order to make it a little bit quicker, I can actually double click in the white space and it will exit me out of the sketch. So I'm going to do that again. I go into Edit Sketch. I'm in Edit Sketch mode. I've gone through, I've changed the dimensions I wanted to, and then I just double click in the white space and it exits me out of that sketch. So that's a pretty quick way just to get out of that sketch really simply. Like I said, it's more like a mode that it's turning on because it's turning on several features. And what this feature is doing, it's kind of like a quick sketch mode. So you can quickly change the dimensions and quickly add a dimension or edit a dimension. So it's kind of, I like to think of Instant 2D as quickly going through your sketches. Like I said, when I'm teaching Essentials, I turn it on because we very deliberately want to be clicking everything and want to make sure we're doing it right. Something else that you can do, now let's look at the Instant 3D option, so we're working with the 3D part. So I know that the sketches to create this part were here and here. Notice I just click on the part and the Instant 2D bubbles still appear, so I can make it bigger or smaller. I'm going to show you how I did that again. So I just clicked on the Boss Extrude because that has all the sketches in it. I saw that I still have the little blue bubbles, which means I can drag it out to a different dimension. I see a lot of questions on these increments with Instant 2D or Instant 3D, and they're controlled by the zoom of your part. So if I were to zoom out a little bit more, I'd get larger increments, and if I were to zoom in, I'd get smaller increments. So notice now I have by the millimeter instead of the 10 of millimeters. All right. The other thing that I can do, so I've adjusted sketch dimensions, but what if I want to adjust this feature dimension? So this Boss Extrude was created from something like this, and I want to adjust its height. Well, that's where Instant 3D comes into play. So I can click on Boss Extrude. I see my 15. I could drag the little blue bubble there. Another cool thing I can do, I can just click on this space, and I see some orange arrows here. I can actually just drag the face up this way without having to find that bubble. And that was without clicking on this Boss Extrude one at all. So notice nothing selected, click the orange face, and I can just drag it up however much I want. Same thing goes with the location of the part. So I could actually move this in directions on the origin. Now, I have this locked into place, so it's letting me know, hey, by doing this, you're deleting those. I do want to keep them, so I'm just going to hit cancel. But this would be a way to move your part all around the origin if you wanted to. Another really cool thing about Instant 2D, I'm going to flip over to another part that I have open. So this is just a simple little cylinder I have. It has a cylindrical cut and a cylindrical boss. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have done this before because I know I've done it before. I go, I create my cut, and I realize, and I type in 15, and I realize I wanted that to be a boss on top of it, not a cut down into it. With Instant 3D, something really cool, so if I drag my cut up, I can actually turn my cut that was down into a boss, and notice it's turned over to a boss now. And I could do the reverse, so I drag it down and drop it on there. Maybe change that to exactly 20. And I've changed my boss into a cut and my cut into a boss. So that's pretty handy there, just kind of knowing what to do. And the way that it calculates it out is if it's going into something, it agrees it should be a cut, and if it's going out of something, it agrees that it should be a boss. Okay. So what about the assembly? What does Instant 2D and Instant 3D allow me to do within the assembly? So I'm looking at my assembly, and I notice I have Instant 3D turned on, and I have Instant 2D turned on. And what does this allow me to do? So it allows me to do everything from before. So here's that part. If I go into the Boss Extrude, if I were to, for instance, edit the part, and then just double click on this Boss Extrude, notice I still get those little blue bubbles, which means I can drag, make them bigger and smaller. And I have all of my Instant 2D, Instant 3D abilities there as far as dragging it out, making it taller. Control Z that so I don't mess with any mates. But something else it allows you to do, I'm going to toggle Instant 3D off for a second just to show you. So introduced a little while ago in SolidWorks were the breadcrumbs, and I see a lot of people not sure what to do with them. And I really like the breadcrumbs as far as mates go. So I like being able to use my breadcrumbs to investigate my mate, so I can see that this has a concentric mate, has a coincident mate, and it has a distance mate. But I always found it weird that you couldn't double click on the distance mate to change it. But with Instant 3D, I can actually turn Instant 3D on, and when I click on that and I get my breadcrumbs, I can double click on this and notice the little dimension pops up. I can either change it using the little bubbles, so you see the little blue bubbles there. I know it's hanging over a blue part, so it's a little bit more difficult to see. Or I can just click on the 8 and change it. So remember, it's a single click because we're in Instant 3D. Just change the 8 maybe to a 10. And it will move that part back and forth. So that's a really nice feature I found on Instant 3D, and I really like being able to edit that there because I really like using these breadcrumbs as far as my assemblies go. So I really like being able to see all of the mates, and this is just one more way I can edit my mate without having to go through and look through all of my mates. And then, so I'm working with this part, so I go to its mates. Without having to do all of that. All right. So that was a little bit about Instant 2D and Instant 3D. That went over what they do, when you want them on, when you want them off. A really good way I like to think about it is to think about them as modes, not just settings. So remember, it turns on, especially with Instant 2D, and we saw a lot of things that it turned on our ability to be able to do. So if you don't want all of those quick things, or you don't want the little box, you always want to be able to double click and get all those settings, it'd be a good idea to turn Instant 2D off. If you're changing dimensions on the fly, you're not messing with any of the other settings, maybe making equations, maybe it'd be a good idea to turn Instant 2D on. And same goes with Instant 3D. If you don't want to accidentally bump a part and make it bigger, maybe turn it off. But if you're building parts within each other on the fly, so for example, I could have changed my assembly parts to match other assemblies. It's a really good idea to have that on.